the union budget, and already the messages I'm getting is that brilliant budget, especially when it comes really to the income tax. Well, that's what matters to people. As I said, companies may do well, but you don't live in your office. You go home. Work from home is over, but kitchens have to run. And Nirmala Sitharaman and Finance Minister Modi were playing to a plan. I said that. How many of you said that? Gautam Chikrimani, will you admit कि थोड़ा politics और थोड़ा economics?
बहुत हाथ जोड़ता हूँ आपके सामने पॉलिटिकल सेंसिटिविटी की, मगर ये तो वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस बजट है. It's in continuation of what's going on. I love the fact that infrastructure spending is up, which means growth will be up. So that's my entire focus. I think this
and your Jan Vishwas bills and the compliance issues sorted out. So that's a big one. But let me first get. I'm coming to you, Dr. Bhalla. Can you give us the tax breaks that have come in, because that's what most people are looking at.
Sure. So Navika, I think you got your wish list right in the budget.
No, it wasn't my wish list. It was all the calls that we were getting. But how does it translate? We've got one simple working that's on the screens. But there is a 42.7% income tax slab in the old rate.
Correct.
What happens to that one is what people will want to know.
Right. So there is definitely a thing to share there, because the highest tax rate for the individual taxpayer was 42.74%, and that was because of the highest surcharge was 37%. This budget brings down that surcharge from 37% to 25%. So the maximum marginal rate for an individual who is earning income more than 5 crore goes down to 39%. So that's like a reduction of 3.74% tax rate for the individual who is earning more than 5 crore income. And that's a significant reduction, roughly about 10% of the overall tax liability.
5 crore hai nahi, why are we bothered about? But Dr. Bhalla, what do you think?
I want to make a general point on the budget first. And I think you alluded to that phrase, it's a workhorse budget. That is very systematic, very organized, very good, which brings me to my following point, that a budget day, when things are announced which were secret for the year, should be done away with.
Okay.
This is obviously consultations throughout the year with all the stakeholders. You get the suggestions. This is how it is done. We want to be an advanced country. We will be an advanced country, I think much before 2047, which is what the PM wants. And part of that is there's no budget day.
Okay.
So you tell me, when was the last time you heard of a budget day in the
any
US?
other country? Yeah. Absolutely.
So
well
that's
said.
what, otherwise, within the constraints that we have, I think very, very organized. It hits all the right buttons. It's even reduced custom duties on several items. So I think, overall, there isn't anything negative.
I absolutely agree with you. All the right buttons have been pressed. It's an election year, so there is political messaging. There is the tribal fund of 15,000 crore. There is money that has been put in for mechanized manhole cleaning. There is 50 years interest-free loans to states.
Mahila savings certificates,
Mahila saving
senior citizens.
Because Mahilas vote for Narendra Modi, so he's rewarded them 2 years. And
even Karnataka's drought-prone area gets
senior
something.
Citizens, Karnataka. So the political message right there, but they haven't gone OTT, as they say these days, over the top. They've stayed in that region of fiscal discipline and bringing in fiscal deficit from 6.4 now to 5.9. That's the target. Would be a commendable job, but I want to get in the first comment from Dr. Mehrotra. Dr. Mehrotra, what do you think about the budget?
Well, firstly, I think the FM needs to be congratulated for actually increasing capex and particularly transferring 1.3 lakh crores, which is higher than the amount she transferred last year to the states for sustaining their their capital expenditure, because that's what generates the jobs, especially the states. Let's just remember that broadly, it's the states who undertake most of the capex within public capex. The center is much less important, so it's very good that she's done that. At the same time, I'm not exactly enthused by the fact that direct tax revenues are going to drop by 38,000 crores, which in a state, I know it's nothing, but at the same time, the fact remains that the contribution in central tax revenues of direct taxes has been systematically falling under this government for the last 5 years, and the share of indirect taxes has been rising. Not a good thing in a country which is so unequal. And the final point I'd make is that I'm happy about the customs duties being reduced, the basic custom duty coming down from 21% to 13%. It seems like a reversal of a trend that this government had adopted for many years. And particularly I'm happy about the fact that they've sustained an attempt to correct the inverted duty structure, where the earlier system was that you were actually disincentivizing domestic manufacture because your finished goods were cheaper on customs duty than raw materials.
So, as a professor, how many marks out of 10 would you give this budget?
6.
Dr.
Subramanian.
Chikramani,
Okay.
How many marks?
Simply on the basis of the capital expenditure on infrastructure rising by 33%, 7. Add to that the compliances being reduced and imprisonment clauses being reduced, 8. And I still need to read the fine print. So 8 is my starting point.
Dr. Subramanian, joining us from DC. Your assessment.
Rahul, I think, given the pressures that there would have been, this being the budget before the elections, I think it's an excellent budget.
11
I'm
of
going
10?
I would say 8.5 to 9 on 10. To me, two key areas stand out. I think the first is the infrastructure, and I want to throw some color on that. Second is the financial sector. Let me start with the financial sector because others haven't commented on it as yet. The credit guarantee scheme, I think, extending that is an excellent, step, because I was looking at the economic survey data, and if you look at the credit to the MSMEs on average this year, every month, if you look at the average, the credit has grown by 30% plus, actually 30.5%. And not just that, even in November and December, even credit to large industry has grown in excess of 10%. So I think credit picking up, and especially MSMEs, I think that's a very good step. Second is, I think, may not get as much attention, but I think is a fundamental move, which is the National Financial Information Registry. Many of you would recall that in the 2019-20 economic survey, we had actually covered, examining 50 years of bank nationalization. We had proposed the public sector banking network. This to me essentially seems like a version of that. What it will do is reduce information asymmetry, which is what has really hobbled lending in India. What this will look to do is to bring data across public sector banks and thereby really enable lending, reduce adverse selection and moral hazard. These are two key things that we talk about. So I think financial sector is really spend it by FY 23-24. I think that is excellent because the 50-year loans actually are very provide significant benefits, but by making it a conditional on states investing in the next 2 years, I think that is excellent. Together with the 0.5% of fiscal deficit condition on power sector reforms, I think that is very important as well, because eventually manufacturing sector growth depends on these. So apart from that, I will actually, and here again I will disagree with Dr. Mehrotra. I think if you look at the impact of the tax cuts, the income tax cuts, I think this is something that Navika, if you were asking me, I was not that optimistic about it, but I think the fact that they've brought this will encourage consumption.
It means my grey hair in covering politics is slightly better than your experience as the chief economic advisor, only advising on matters of sound finance, because politics is
I'll grant you that. I'll grant you that.
spins this country.
No, I'll grant you that, Navika. But I think it will actually, because it is focused on a lot of the, those salaried individuals that earn less. While the top bracket has also been reduced, this might actually have a significant impact on spurring consumption, which is something that has been picking up. Also, I was looking at the data. If you look at the public, investment itself, the gross fixed capital formation has exceeded 35%. The public capex will accelerate that further. So overall, from the emphasis on growth and thereby employment, I think this is an excellent budget, 8.5 out of 10.
8.5.
All right, great.
Rajiv Mantri.
Yeah, so I would just like to highlight one point. So when the tax rate was increased at the highest level, it reached 43-44%. There was obviously a lot of outcry at that time.
I think 5 crore is quite insignificant. I think we need to bring it down to 25 the way the companies are being done. I think we need to incentivize wealth creators. I think we need more billionaires. We need more billionaires. No, it won't.
Wait for 2029, even that will happen.
We need more billionaires out of India.
Well,
yeah, but it will not come from giving lower tax rates.
1 minute, Dr. Bhalla, I'll just, because the consumer point of view comes from Bejon Mishra, and let me get him in. Do you think voters in India will be impressed with Modi Sarkar's budget? It's Modi and Nirmala Sitharaman. Do they need to take a bow? Because on your provident fund, you get 30 to 20%, 10% reduction in tax rates. Right. Of course, the rich people get their tax break, the slabs, the exemption limits. Do you think overall people will be happy?
Of course, they should be, because Navika, let me be very candid. I looked at this budget. This is just overall. Now, I'm not getting into details. It's a green budget. It's a budget which would encourage consumers to consume more of bio products, which would enable them to promote that. And India is the highest consumption country, 1.4 billion people and 60% consumption in the GDP, So what I am looking at is the government has given a very pragmatic, progressive, a very modern kind of a budget where it is enabling consumers. And let me tell you, I am looking at it that it will be a kind of, overall in this budget, I can see that it is very visionary. And I'm definitely sure that, this was well planned out in terms of coming out of this kind of a budget this year prior to the 24, general elections. The whole concept was encourage youth. That has also got reflected. MSME, it has got reflected. And at the end of the day, because I represent the consumers, I would always encourage to be seen that the prices are coming down, it is getting managed properly, because a lot of duties have come down, and of course as far as the salaried
savings rate is another issue that we need to talk about, and the Mahila Samman, that's also political messaging, and in addressing the savings rate overall, which was going down.
Look, as I said, this is a workhorse budget. This is what a budget should be. And, on what everybody else, certainly the three of us, or I feel this whole income tax, direct personal income tax regime has to be reformed. And this is maybe the beginning, may not be. We'll have to wait till 24, 25. Let me tell
you, Mr. Bhalla, there are
political
political reactions coming in.
Okay.
The Samajwadi Party says, "Jhoot ka pulinda."
But that you could have predicted even before the budget.
That's not news.
Yogendra Yadav says, budget disappointing for farmers. Budget disappointing for farmers, Yogendra Yadav says. Well, I'm just saying, these are what people are saying. Modi ji 50 नए एयरपोर्ट बनाएंगे, देंगे किसको? Says the Aam Aadmi Party Sanjay Singh, who's also an MP. So that's the kind of commentary that is coming through right now.
Completely expected.
So this is just the opposition
completely
being
correctly forecast.
Okay, the opposition being
So But you know, I want to
I
make
said
larger
all
points.
of these three lines also. Again,
Now
experience.
the problem is with the Congress, they are saying that this budget is just like a manifesto. So
Kar
if
do
it had
to
not,
problem hai,
if it had
nahi
not-
karo to problem hai.
Exactly.
How do you address this? And I don't know if
yeah.
Here's something that was going around WhatsApp a day ago. Okay? But this is really comes to the point. 11 a.m. the budget will be announced. 1:15 p.m. Congress would declare budget as a disaster. CPI would declare budget as friendly to Ambani and Andani. SP would declare budget as anti-farmers. You just had something. And this person didn't have Yugandhar Yadav in there. But, you know,
Yeah.
but let me come to the larger point, serious point. The reason we have surcharges, as some of us might know, is because center-state adjustments, relationships, constitutionally, so a surcharge, the states do not get any money from any tax collected from the surcharge. This is what is distorting our entire tax system. And we need, I think that's the final step, that basically you want unification between individuals, between firms, between corporates. What is preventing is the whole idea of how center-state finances have to be handled. And I think that is the next project for this government to take up. And maybe it'll show fruition.
Is the maths adding up? Because, you know, you have these allocations, some of them are historic. Doctor, I want to come across to you in DC. Is the maths adding up? There will be people who will question that you have outlays already which are stretching the...
You know, I absolutely trust him to not pull any tricks on this. You know, till he's at the helm, I think the numbers will be very transparent. You know, in fact, you would recall that after he came in as the expenditure secretary, we actually managed to clean up a lot of the off-balance sheet items.
True, but I'm asking specifically, if you look at the numbers, and I'm sure you have a rough idea, where are these numbers coming from? Because if it's all pegged on hope, the hope of growth, then I don't know. I mean, then it becomes problematic, doesn't it?
No, I don't think that should be the case, because the growth projection from the economic survey, which is what very likely the budget is, you know, budget uses, you know, of 11% in nominal terms, I think is eminently achievable. On top of that, I think they would have taken a tax buoyancy ratio of 1.2, which translates into, you know, tax growth of about 13%. I think, and that should be definitely doable, explicitly because of the way in which tax revenues have improved, you know, over the last couple of years. So I'll have to look at the fine print, but I think there is nothing, you know, hoodwinking in the numbers. These should definitely be possible, primarily because of the revenue growth that has been happening. I mean, you note the latest GST numbers came at 1,55,000 crores. I mean, and that's something which cannot be ignored either. So I think the budget math actually seems to be fine.
Well, Dr. Subramaniam, the other question I want to ask you about is unemployment has been a major issue that we've talked about, and that's been the political criticism. Now, skilling was a very important cornerstone of Prime Minister Modi's policies in 2014. Somewhere in the middle, it dropped off the map a bit. This time, again, there is a emphasis on it. But do you think the allocations are enough? Will it address the issue of unemployment? Because it's a burning concern.
So first of all, you know, Navika, I think, you know, as I was mentioning earlier as well, before the budget, a lot of, you know, what we take as extant wisdom on employment seems to be drawn from the noisy, unreliable CMIE data. If we look at the PLFS, you know, data, and I'm going to quote some numbers actually using the annual PLFS, which I must mention covers both the, you know, urban and rural areas. You know, even pre-pandemic, the regular wage salary salaried employees. And by the way, this does not include the unpaid labor that Dr. Mehrotra was talking about, because regular wage salaried employees cannot be unpaid labor. That increased by 4.1 crore in 2019-20 vis-a-vis 2011-12. Just note that 4.1 crore in 2019-20 versus 2011-12, and it is 87 lakhs higher now during the pandemic period, so 2020-21 versus 2018-19. So I think a lot of the narratives that have been pushed on employment actually do not stand the scrutiny of good data. So that is something which we have to acknowledge very clearly. Of this, I will also mention female regular wage and salaried employees. For instance, the CMI data keeps talking about female labor force participation rates having decreased. Dr. Sujit Bhalla actually challenged Dr. Mehrotra about this. I will mention here, 1.43 crore increase, in female regular wage and salaried employees in 2019-20 versus 2011-12, and a 44 lakh increase in 2020-21 versus 2018-19. So I think these numbers actually are something which we have to, take care of. Also, lastly, I think if you look at even organized employment as well, organized sector employment, that has also increased significantly if you look at the data. So I think the first point we must acknowledge is that this
now pays only 45,000 rupees as taxes. Up to 3 lakhs, of course, no tax that they will be paying. 15 lakhs if you earn in a year, then you have to pay income tax of 1.5 lakh. It was 1.87 lakh earlier. It's now down to 1.5 lakhs, and also higher limit of 2 lakh per member for cash deposit and loans by primary agriculture credit societies. So this is also helping the agriculturists, and highest surcharge rate down from 37 to 25%. These income tax concessions will have to be looked at. Let me get an industry perspective also. Sanjay Kapoor joining us live, Sona Steering Chief, joining us live from CII. What do you think about this budget? How does the industry rate this budget given its emphasis on capital expenditure, which clearly would have an eye on growth of the economy?
So, I think it's a growth-oriented budget. It's been great in terms of all the infrastructure spending, or the focus on infrastructure, in terms of energy transition as well. A lot of focus on green growth, which will definitely help us in the right direction in terms of everything that we're doing in the industry, in terms of EV, alternate fuels, etc. There's a lot of talk about battery energy storage, so a lot of focus on AI as well, which is, good to hear, moving in the right direction from that perspective. The finance minister talked about the scrappage policy. So while there are a few details about that, I'm hoping that sort of scrappage policy kicks in, and we can see a lot more of that through different states. The finance minister sort of talked about income taxes at the lower level, which will definitely fuel spending and more consumption. So we're overall pretty happy about the budget. We need to.
How would you rate it on a scale of 10? How much would you give this budget?
I'd say it's it's up there in the 8 out of 10. I think it was a good budget, and it'll definitely help in terms of everything that we're doing to fuel growth. And if we're looking at a 7% growth, I think this is a great budget for that.
Okay, let's quickly look at a graphic that we've prepared, viewers, to give you an idea of what's been covered in this particular budget exercise. IT slabs revised, taxes have been reduced. We're talking, of course, in the backdrop of an election. So remember that. Impact on voters, it's a relief to middle classes, mostly. 2.4 lakh crore for railways, impact on voter, new trains and modernization, which will obviously help certain regions in connectivity, and that obviously leads to a trickle-down effect. You have the Awas Yojana outlay enhanced, Navika, important number, 66%. The only quibble one might have here is that the target for last year was missed quite substantially for the Awas, number of Awases that were promised, but you had a problem with delivery. So obviously more poor voters to get houses. Now, remember viewers, these are very targeted schemes and they help actually in galvanizing a vote base. One might say that this is also, of course, a growth booster, naturally, but there are different ways of also interpreting this, and that's perhaps why the Congress party comes out and says it's an election budget. Mahila saving plan, deposit facility up to 2 lakhs, again financial incentives for women, empowering them, etc., 50 additional airports and aerodromes. Obviously this would also push for connectivity, infra development, and give regions a lift. Manholes to become machine holes, very, very important. Dignity to lower caste involved in this. So this is very high on symbolism. And of course, 10,000 crores for urban infra development to create jobs. So already you have had the Prime Minister come out and announce jobs, saying that we're going to create 10 lakh jobs. But I think Mr. Mehrotra had a point to make on not just the numbers, but also something that Dr. Subramanian was saying. Mr. Mehrotra.
So let me begin. I want to make 3 sets of points, if I may.
Yes, of course.
The budget speaks about adding to the credit guarantee for MSMEs 9,000 crores, which is peanuts considering that there are 66 million non-farm MSMEs in the country. 66 million. What is 9,000 crores? And so we have to keep this in mind. And the second thing we need to keep in mind in this context about the 9,000 crores is that it is intended only for registered MSMEs. And the registered MSMEs constitute precisely 1% of this 66 million. And just to point out that MSMEs, which are 99% unregistered and therefore they are unorganized, do contribute, according to the economic survey, table 9.9, contribute 48% of share in exports of the country, but that is down, and that was 2018, and that's down in fiscal year 23 to 42% from 48. Which is why you have seen unemployment rising and the employment rate, which is the share of the working age population, falling.
But Mr. Mehrotra, 10 years of Modi, 10 years of Modi, he's gone into his 10th year. I just want to point out one, you talk about this, and I'm not in any way disparaging that fact. Per capita income has more than doubled to 1.97 lakhs in around 9 years. Now, this is a big number.
Yes. But obviously, this is happening for those who are above the median of the income and the median of the population. That's the point. The poor are getting poorer. We know that from 43% to 37%. That's a vast decline. And at the same time, when the employment rate is falling, the unemployment rate, youth unemployment, has anyone any idea what youth unemployment 15 to 29-year-olds for PLFS has gone from? From 2013, 2012, when it was something like 6%, on average for the entire youth, it's 16%. If you are a graduate, it went from 18% to 36%. I'm talking about youth unemployment. And this is, obviously, most of these people are not unpaid family labor. They're looking for work, but they are not finding work.
So they are your demographic.
So in other words, what we are saying is MSMEs have collapsed.
Yeah.
They are closing. They are the ones who provide non-farm jobs. And for them in the budget, we are providing.
Okay, let's get in Dr. Subramanian to respond to you on this point.
Which is the reason also manufacturing share of GDP is falling.
Okay.
Also the reason why manufacturing share of employment is falling.
Okay. Doctor.
I think there are lots of factual errors that are being made here. Let me quote from the, firstly, I think the first factual error is that the outlay of 7,000 crores is only for the guarantee. I'm sure, Dr. Mehrotra understands that is essentially contingent on there being a default, first loss default. That's how the scheme has been organized. That guarantee of 7,000 crores will actually translate into credit of 2 lakh crores. 2 lakh crores is certainly not peanuts, and I'm sure my learned friend understands this very well. Second, let me, I don't interrupt when you speak, so allow me to speak as well. I think when we look at the manufacturing sector, and Dr. Dr. Panagaria sent this to me as well, Dr. Arvind Panagaria, and I've looked at the data. The manufacturing sector, as a percentage of GDP now is 18.2%. This is from the statistical tables. Okay. So I don't know what Dr. Mehrotra is talking about. If you look at the actual data, the numbers are very clear. So let's not peddle these fake narratives. And the third fake point narrative. Here being unemployment. I think on the employment as well. On the employment, it is very important to keep in mind that the unemployment rate has declined to 7.2%. Whether it's the LFPR, labor force participation rate, the worker to population ratio, or the unemployment rate, all of those have actually declined. So I don't know what data.
Okay, we have two very accomplished people differing on the numbers in a substantial manner. Let's for a moment change tact and bring in the industry point of view. Sanjeev Goenka, founder and chairman of RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, joins us. Thank you very much for speaking to Times Now, Mr. Goenka. How do you rate this budget? What are your first impressions of the budget?
Well, thanks for having me here, Rahul. But let me just say that, generally, typically after a budget, you say, we want kuch aur chahiye. Dil mange more. This is a budget which really leaves you not asking for anything more. And what do you expect from a budget? Focus on capex, focus on inclusive growth, focus on entrepreneurship, focus on startups, focus on agriculture, focus on infrastructure. Focus on simplification. Focus on decriminalization, and almost every taxpayer will be paying less taxes. It literally covers the entire canvas. What more can you want? So for me, it's great, it's outstanding, it's comprehensive, it lays the foundation for huge investments going forward, not only in 23-24, but for the next several years.
But Mr. Goenka, many would ask that question. Good afternoon, this is Navika here. Many would ask that question that every year, India Inc. gives these huge numbers on a scale of 10, 8 and 9 to the budget. But at the end of the day, private investment hasn't really come up to the expectations. My question today to you would be, now with this budget, when you say that dil ko sab kuch mil gaya hai, dil cannot mange more, then will we actually see the private investment rate going up? And are we looking at a turnaround in that sense?
For sure. I think let's not forget that the last 2 years, you had the backdrop and the shadow of COVID looming large. So private sector was, I think, naturally being cautious in terms of committing. The focus was on deleveraging, the focus was on consolidation, and the focus was on capacity utilization. All that has happened in the last 2 years. Now, I think people are reasonably confident of investing, and you will see investment coming forward. I think there is no doubt in that.
Okay, so if that's the thumbs up coming in from India Inc., that's the thumbs up coming in from most economists, of course with some reservations from Dr. Mehrotra here. Sanjay Jha, where do you stand on this budget? It talks about fiscal discipline. It talks about tying up, and there is a subtle message there when states have been given a target of 3.5% fiscal deficit and 0.5% tied to power sector reforms, which means free revdi, free bijli, pani, all that will have a little bit of a check. I'd like
exuberant when Nirmala Sitharaman gave those huge tax breaks in 2019. I challenge anybody from India Inc. today to tell us all how many jobs have they created. And after getting a 1,45,000 crore tax concession, if your private business has still not reached the levels that it had done in the phase of the 2004 to 9, when it reached 38% GDP, what are we talking about? Number two, where is inclusive growth? I would have liked the FM to start her speech by first apologizing to the farmers of India Because Navika, this is the year 2022. Farmer incomes were meant to have doubled. And if you look at it in real terms, the farmers are worse off than they were before. Third, I'm quoting government data. If you look at the last survey that the government released, it accepted that 82% of workers in India, and I'm including agricultural labor, urban poor, urban workers, etc., their real incomes today are lower than what they were pre-pandemic. So exactly if you look at the numbers today, there's worry. Point number 4, even on Manrega, the number of households covered are lower in 2022 than they were.
Okay, so you've given, let me bring in Sanjeev Goenka once more. One second, Sanjay Jha. These are important statistics. Let me just bring in, because look, if you are pinning your hopes on growth to get you out of trouble, Mr. Goenka, as the government is sort of betting on, and that's why they're investing in capex, etc. As a businessman who is going to obviously take the baton forward by investing, what is it in this budget for a businessman like you that makes you say, well, we couldn't have asked for more? Does it address your needs?
You know, frankly, this budget, and it's not specific just this budget, but it's the actions of the government over the last 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. There has been a strong focus on infrastructure creation. There has been a strong focus on simplification. There has been a strong focus on decriminalization. There has been a focus on encouraging startups. Look at the number of unicorns that have been created with startups. So the enabling atmosphere or environment for investment is good. It's strong. India is a great market. India has a vision going forward. Most of the other economies in the world are facing headwinds. India is probably one of the very few economies in the world which, thanks to the actions of the government, is having a very strong tailwind. So as a businessman, you're going to look at where you're going to get maximum returns. And frankly, India is the place where you get maximum returns at this point in time. So there is no logic for you not to invest in India.
Well, thank you.
But then, Mr. Goenka, the criticism has been that the investment hasn't come forward and high net worth individuals are moving out of the country. That's been the criticism. So if you say there is an enabling atmosphere and you know, the rules of the game are to push growth, then how do we actually keep these conflicting actions that seem to be happening?
Let's not forget that the last 2 years were COVID inflicted. And corporate India focused on consolidation, focused on actually being cautious, on deleveraging. So it was a different environment. It's the first time in 2 or 3 years that you're free of the specter of COVID. So you're able to think ahead. COVID hit us like a bolt from the blue.
Okay.
And I think now corporate India is actually looking at investment, is looking at growth, and is convinced that the world markets will respond, but India is the place to invest.
Under Mr. Modi in the last 9 years, he'll be remembered, and this will be the legacy for the 10 years of which he is certain to be Prime Minister, is jobless growth and the destruction of the demographic dividend story. Give you an example. Today, one of the problems that many people will not talk about, and we all know why, is because you have very low aggregate demand, largely because India has become an unequal society. And you have a very good economist in the gentleman who was a former CA. I really like what he says. I may disagree with him on many issues. But the truth is, and he will have to agree with this, that in an economy which is unequal, demand will eventually become your biggest bottleneck to GDP growth. Where is the middle class discretionary expenditure going to come into play? The middle class itself has shrunk post-pandemic, Rahul. The urban poor is a massive challenge. And this government has not been able to stem the rot at all.
Okay.
So, you know, giving a little middle, you know, they have given an income tax relief on the slabs, but have you seen how much they're taking away? So this is a very cosmetic jugglery going on.
Okay.
And I think at the end of the day, the budget, I'm sorry to say, and I'm wearing an economist hat, is subpar.
Dr. Subramanian, another response for you.
So again, let me state the facts, right? If you look at the investment in the economy, what economists call the gross fixed capital formation to GDP, and I'm quoting from the economic survey, for 2021-22, it is 35.2%, has gone beyond the 35% threshold, and that it has increased from 32.8%. So allied with that, also look at another fact. If you look at the April to December of 2022 period and compare it, to the 2020 same period, the manufacturing investment from private investors is actually tripled. I think that is clear indication of the investment coming in. And I think here I actually would second what Mr. Goenka was saying, that in a period of uncertainty, it is always the case that private sector actually stays on the sidelines. But I think now that uncertainty seems to be clearly investors are getting used to it. So we should see, as we have already seen, the increase in gross fixed capital formation. This should accelerate further, and I hope it actually stretches towards 40% of GDP. That's the first point to keep in mind. Second, and I think here both Dr. Mehrotra earlier and Sanjay now I think seem to be reading from a script that actually is full of errors on employment. I think I've said it umpteen number of times, backed with solid research, that the CMI data is noisy, unreliable, and a lot of what these folks talk about on employment comes from that unreliable noisy data. If you look at the PLFS data, and this is from the NSSO, for God's sake, it is not administrative data. And actually, if you look at the employment creation, I've actually mentioned those facts earlier as well. So this point about jobless growth that Sanjay is talking about, I think, it doesn't fit the data. So let's talk based on data, and I think not peddle narratives that actually are,
Okay.
He has conceded 7.2% on his own.
Okay.
So if 7.2% may have come down, but isn't that staggering?
Okay.
I mean, doesn't that bother you, Mr.
Surjit Bhalla wants to respond. Yeah.
As does Sanju Verma.
That both the two critics have pointed out to increasing inequality in India. Very emphatically, Sanjay Jha, very emphatically, in Santosh Mehrotra. Now, I don't need to tell you any more about the unreliability of CMI data. However, given that these experts are fond of using the CMI data, that the CMI data itself, and this is analysis done not just by CMI itself, but also by the World Bank, etc., that inequality in India has declined.
Yes.
Not gone up. So when people say the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, you're saying inequality is going up. But the CMI data shows just the opposite. And matter of fact, record amount of decline in inequality in the Indian experience. That's all I want to say.
So would you agree with that? I'm coming to you, Sanju Verma. I thought I'll get in Mr. Yogendra Yadav, who's joining us. Yogendra Yadav ji, if the CMI data itself is to be believed, Dr. Bhalla and former Chief Economic Advisor, current Executive Director to the IMF, K.V. Subramaniam, also say that inequalities are actually reducing. The fact that this budget has something for each of these sectors, including some social security measures that have been announced, do you think this budget is more equitable than it has been in the past, at least from the eyes of the opposition?
Navika, I'm no expert on unemployment, and Mr. Santosh Mehrotra being around, I don't think I should speak very much on unemployment. He should. And I think Mr. Bhalla had said something about inequalities going down, and Jean Drèze had written an article, and I thought any honorable person should shut up after reading that article. But anyway, these things go on. Can I focus on agriculture, which is something I know a bit, one or two things about? And I say that with full sense of responsibility, and please listen to me because I'm now giving you new information which may not have figured on your show till now. This is the most anti-farmer budget in the history of this country. I say that not based on the speech alone, because I thought these are not figures of any private agencies, these are figures from the budget taken 5 minutes ago, because now the budget has been downloaded. The overall expenditure on agriculture and allied sectors has gone down compared to what it was last year. Last year was 3.84% of the union budget. This time it is 3.20% of the union budget. 0.64 decline in 1 year. And mind you, last year was lower than the year before that. This means that in some of the key schemes, the actual allocations have gone down. And I'm now giving you figures in rupees crore. On Prime Minister Fasal Bima Yojana, the figure has gone down from 15,500 crores last year to 13,625 crores. Obviously, the scheme is unpopular. The government's own committee is saying, please do something about this scheme. It's not doing well. The allocation has gone down. On Manrega, the allocation last year was 72,000 crore. Actual expenditure was more than 1 lakh crore. The allocation has been brought down to 60,000 crore rupees. Can you believe it? On fertilizers, the actual expenditure is 2,25,000 crores. The allocation is 1,75,000 crores. There is an overall omnibus scheme called Rashtriya Kisan Vikas Yojana, which has all kinds of components in it. Last year, 10,400 crore rupees. This year, 7,150 crore rupees. I'll not bore you further. I'll just give you one more figure. There is a scheme of the government, PSS and Market Intervention Scheme, PSSS MIS it is called, which is to ensure that farmers get the decent price that they deserve. There used to be another scheme called ASHA. What was the overall allocation of those schemes? Last time, 1,500 crore rupees. What is the allocation for ensuring that farmers get MSP? And now listen to me carefully, Navika. Last year was 1,500 crore rupees. This year it is 0.1 crore rupee. Yes, you heard me right. These are the real figures. This is the most anti-farmer budget in the history of this country, and I speak with figures.
Well, Sanju Verma, the charge is there. Please respond to the charges made by Yogendra Yadav.
Yogendra Yadav has this habit of looking at the glass as always half empty. Let me just put some facts out there in the public domain, which have already been elucidated by the current, CEA, Mr. Anantha Nageswaran. First and foremost, let me respond to the allegations by Yogendra Yadav that this government is anti-farmer. I hope you're aware that more than 2 lakh crore, amounting to almost 0.8% of India's GDP, has been given to more than 11 crore farmers via just a single scheme, PM Kisan. Now look at PM Fasal Bima Yojana. More than 6 crore farmers currently benefit, and you have to pay an insurance premium of less than 1%. I will not even go into the nuances of the fact that the agri credit limit has been hiked from 18 lakh crore to 20 lakh crore. But look at the MSP of wheat, paddy, all the 23 crops / food items that come under MSP. They are at historic highs, at record highs. Let me also tell you that 20,000 crore under the Agri Investment Infra Scheme to give back-end facilities to farmers and improve logistics. The corpus of 20,000 crore, that has benefited farmers like never before. Because very often, the produce is large, the MSP is in place, but because of lack of back-end logistics, farmers really don't get to benefit. Which is not the case because the Modi government has put that infrastructure in place. Also look at FPOs. When the Modi government took charge in May 2014, there were hardly any FPOs, farmer producer organizations, which is a collective of people so that farmers can negotiate the best terms when they negotiate with a counterparty on the other side. By 2024-25, there will be more than 8,000 to 10,000 FPOs in India, which I think speaks volumes about the fact that farmers will now call the shots and their bargaining power will not be compromised. So Mr. Yogendra Yadav, please go back and educate yourself. I want to add something to what Mr. Mehrotra said about MSMEs. Though the former CEA on your panel rebutted the charges brilliantly, I have something to add. This is how these people, they fake data. What did Mr. Mehrotra say? He said 99.7% of the MSMEs, are in the unorganized sector, which means they are unregistered and hence they will not benefit from the schemes announced by the Modi government, including the 9,000 crore odd credit guarantee scheme. Now, this is where, I want to say the devil lies in the detail. If you look at the 99.7% figure, out of 99.7% of MSCs in the unorganized sector, only 2/3 are unregistered, which means only 66% of the overall MSMEs are unregistered. 34% of the MSMEs in India today are registered and get benefits. They got benefits at the height of COVID second wave via the emergency credit loan guarantee scheme. Can I just finish in 2 seconds?
Yes, ma'am.
20 seconds.
Yeah.
MSMEs were given top preference, collateral-free loans were given, a corpus of 3 lakh crore to that effect was announced. MSMEs, benefited at the height of COVID second wave. They were given, concessional credit facility at barely 7.5%, at best 9% in some cases. So to come here and, try and torture data to suit a certain narrative, I think that is unpardonable. And I will just very quickly give you some numbers. I have this to say that this budget, without compromising on fiscal prudence, given that 5.9% is the fiscal deficit limit set for FY24, without compromising on fiscal prudence, this budget spells growth, and more growth. Effective capex will be 13.7 lakh crore, tantamounting to 4.5% of India's GDP, which is a record in post-independent India. And if you are not buying that, then there's something seriously wrong with you. And I want to tell Sanjay Jha.
No, one second. Let's first get Mr. Yogendra Yadav to respond to you, since you brought him into this. Yes, Yogendra Yadav.
Now that Sanjuji has read out whatever her party had given to her, I'm very grateful.
No.
And
please don't
since
take
she wanted
to
educate me, I actually managed to educate myself in the process. I'm actually deeply educated by what you said, yes. So I'm educated, and here are the figures. You mentioned Kisan Samman Nidhi. Thank you very much. Last year, do you know what was the amount allocated in the budget? It was 68,000 crore rupees for Kisan Samman Nidhi. Yeah. Do you know what is the allocation?
It's come down.
60,000.
It is 60,000 crore rupees. Yes, you heard me down. It has actually come down from 68 to 60. You mentioned Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Do you know that many states, now please allow me to speak. You mentioned Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Do you know that many states have opted out of this scheme? Do you know that Gujarat happens to be one of the states which has said it is such a bad scheme that we are opting out of it? Do you know that the total number of farmers covered has been declining? Do you know that actual budget allocation for this scheme has gone down from 15,500 crore rupees to 13,625 this time? You mentioned MSP. I'm very grateful that you mentioned MSP. Because do you know that there used to be schemes to implement MSP? These schemes were called, there was Asha scheme, which was announced by Arun Jaitley ji, where the allocation used to be 3,000 crore rupees, which last year was reduced to 1 crore rupees, from 3,000 to 1 crore rupee. There are another scheme which is called MSS and Market Intervention Scheme, PSS and Markets Intervention Scheme, where, as I mentioned, the budget has been reduced from 1,500 crore rupees to 0.1 crore rupee. I'm educated, I'm deeply educated. You mentioned FPO. Do you know how many FPOs the government had announced last time? They had said 10,000 FPOs will be created. May I ask you how many have been created? And may I ask for one little petty detail? The BJP, the government has been announcing for 6 years they went around And in this television studio, I heard lots of echoes of that. Doubling of farmers' income, doubling of farmers' income, doubling of farmers' income. For 6 years it was to happen. Do you know what was the deadline? Madam,
this cannot be a monologue by him. I need to
let him finish.
2022.
Yeah, so I've been listening to his monologue.
Do you know
he hasn't finished.
Income today? The actual figures were, please allow me, I'm educated. I'm willing to be more educated. Let's have figures.
No, you cannot be spewing lies. You cannot be spewing lies on national television, and I am not here to listen to your monologue.
8,000.
You made reckless allegations and reported them. Now you're indulging in a monologue.
Committee said that in 2022 it should become 21,000 rupees. And do you know that after 3 years it had only reached 10,000 rupees? And what is the figure? I want to know. I did not get that figure from the government. I would be deeply grateful. I would be educated, Sanjuji. Please educate me.
Yes, now let me speak.
What is the farmer's income today?
Sanju Verma, now respond to Yogendra Yadav.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yogendra Yadav, now let me respond to your allegations. How convenient of you to say that Gujarat opted out of PM Fasal Bima Yojana. You know, this is why I say that the devil is in the detail. Gujarat opted out of the PM Fasal Bima Yojana for certain reasons for just 3 months when Vijay Rupani was the chief minister way back in August of 2020. Gujarat today is very much a part of the PM Fasal Bima Yojana. So point number 1, you are certainly not educated enough because you've been quoting wrong data from the past. Please quote latest data. The latest data says that despite out of 31 states and union territories, out of them, 7 states are not covered under the PM Fasal Bima Yojana. Despite 7 states not being covered under PM Fasal Bima Yojana. Now listen carefully. The number of beneficiaries has gone up from 2.8 crore, just 2.8 crore in 2014-15 to more than 6 crore as we speak now. So your second lie is rebuffed. Now let me speak on the third lie. You are talking of, overall PM Kisan allocation has come down. I think you need to also understand that we should look at aggregate numbers. On an aggregate basis, more than 2 lakh crore, tantamounting to almost 0.8 or 0.9% of India's GDP, has been given out to more than 11.4 crore farmers. Now your fourth lie. Let me tell you something very interesting. Under UPA 1 and UPA 2, do you know how much was given to wheat growers by way of MSP? It was less than 2 lakh crore. And do you know how much Modi government has given just in the case of wheat in the last 8.5 years? It is 5.6 lakh crore. Now let me tell you how much was the payout in terms of pulses. In terms of pulses, under UPA 1 and 2, less than 25,000 crore was paid out. Do you know how much has been paid out in pulses alone by the Modi government? It is more than 1.2 lakh crore. Now let's talk about paddy. In the case of paddy, under the erstwhile UPA 1 and 2, only 3.7 lakh crore was given. And how much has been given out just in the case of paddy by the Modi government? 10.9 lakh crore. Now do your math. Just if you add the MSP for wheat and rice / paddy and pulses, the amount of MSP paid out by the Modi government, I'm talking of just 3 crops / food items, is more than 16 lakh crore, amounting to about 7.4 to 7.6% of India's GDP. So yes, Yogendra Yadav, you need to educate yourself on numbers.
Mr. Chengal Reddy, he's also a farmer's representative, so let us get Mr. Chengal Reddy. Mr. Chengal Reddy, which side of the divide are you on? On Yogendra Yadav's side tonight, or Sanju Verma's explanations hold any logic for you?
Questioned. I rest my case here.
See, it's like, when two immortals are fighting, mortals like us coming, we will be crushed. Don't worry. See, the positive
How dare anybody
of the
crush a
budget
farmer in this country, Chengal Reddy Saab? Please don't get worried.
No. No, it's okay.
I think
See,
can I say
the
one thing?
positive aspects are definitely the credit allocations and focus on dairy, fisheries, and also focus on infrastructure, construction, and supporting FPOs and all that. These are all some of the fundamentals which definitely are going to improve the value addition, help the farmers in overall context. But the challenges which in the last 4 or 5 years we have been facing are totally different. Well, they are not, I don't know, we have to go into fine print to see whether they are really, whether the government is making any steps. The first and foremost is, well, there is no problem in production. The cost of production has increased almost in every crop. So much so today, if you see across the country, including whether cotton, chilies, rice, wheat, the production cost has almost doubled. It's not profitable any longer. The best case is available in South India, where we have studied Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and even some of the northern states like Maharashtra and others, this cotton, rice and all that. Virtually the investment vis-a-vis the price realization has become negative. This is there last 3, 4, 5 years. During COVID and after COVID also, during these 2 years, this is continuing. The reason we have identified is, one thing is the cost of inputs has gone up very high. Whether for pesticides or diesel or tractor hire charges, labor cost and availability of labor, this has become problematic across the country. And then, of course, even the taxes on agriculture inputs are very high, some of them like 18% on the pesticides, plastic items and all that. We expected government that they should come out with what you call how to reduce the cost of production. Because fundamentally what happened in the last 10 years, almost in all the states, the state governments have provided water, irrigation facilities, and electricity, and freely and not a nominal cost, and also credit, including state government and central government. Every farmer is getting sufficient investment for production. Now, having completed the first phase, the second phase comes in terms of improving the productivity and improving the quality, and then making agriculture a globally standards. Now, this hasn't happened in the last many years. I don't know, not that it's during Modi, but it is there for last 10, 15 years, this problem was there. So the question today is, before this government, for the next 1 year is, we only suggest that Mr. Modi government should go into the finer details. See, the political discussions, we are not interested. We know normally we have...
okay, we're getting word that the Prime Minister will be speaking at 2 p.m. The point that I think you're making, Mr. Reddy, is that you think this is a comprehensive budget. That's what you're saying, in short. Is that what you're saying?
Comprehensive way? No, sorry. I mean, I can't use that word. Okay. But it is limited. It has touched, I mean, just core issues it has touched. But whether they are being made available to the farmers, whether they reach the farmers, and it will really benefit the farmers in terms of, earning more income. You see, these are the challenges. Please remember one thing. Today,
so is the budget doing it or not doing it?
Produce and give food to the country, but it is not profitable. No, budget has only touched some periphery here and there.
Okay.
But in details, if you go into the details, I think the government has to review the whole of their budget, the details, and then they have to rework the whole thing. I don't think it has met farmers' aspirations.
Okay, not met the farmers' aspirations in ballpark terms, is what